Breaking patterns is hard. Breaking them alone is why most people don't. I want to take a second to acknowledge something that usually stays hidden behind the after photos and these success stories. If you are here, you are doing the heavy lifting. And I see you. I see the way you're showing up for yourself in the small, quiet ways that nobody around you, not even your boss, your family, or your best friend, fully understands yet. But I also know that underneath that progress, there is a specific hollow ache that doesn't make sense on paper. You have people who love you. You have a life that looks full, and yet you're sitting in the middle of it feeling like you're on a completely different frequency than everyone else. You feel like no one else can quite reach you. That feeling has a name. It's the loneliness of becoming. It's the liminal phase. That awkward, disorienting middle ground where you aren't who you used to be, but you aren't yet who you're going to be. And it is the most honest, least talked about part of what it actually means to heal. Breaking patterns isn't just a mindset shift or a new set of affirmations. It is a full body experience. It is withdrawal, and it is a funeral. Nobody warns you that growth feels so much like loss. You wake up one day and realize that the version of you that kept everyone else comfortable, the easy one, the peacemaker, the one who never asks for much, is dying. And as that version of you fades, the terms and conditions of your entire life start to change. But before we go any further, I need to be very blunt with you. Before you diagnose yourself with depression or decide that you are failing at healing, make sure you aren't just surrounded by people who benefited from you staying in your survival roles. Environment isn't a footnote, it's the whole story. You can do all the inner child work in the world, but if you are swimming in a pool of toxic waste, you're still going to get sick. The systems you live inside, your family, your friends, your group of people at the office, your partner, were often built around your old, wounded roles. When you change them, the system loses its balance, and systems hate losing their balance. When you start to heal, you are essentially violating an invisible contract you signed years ago just to belong. The contract that said you'd be the fixer so everyone else could stay messy. The contract that said you'd stay quiet so the peace would never get disturbed. The contract that said you'd carry everyone else's emotional luggage so you never had to look at your own. These weren't written in ink. They were absorbed. They became the price of your belonging. And when you stop honoring them, when you set a boundary or say no or stop over-explaining your choices to the enforcers or stop over-explaining your choices, the enforcers come out. Suddenly, because you have boundaries, you're being difficult. Because you don't rush in to save the day, you're selfish. Because you stop performing, you're cold. Even when you know why this is happening, it hurts like hell. These were your people. Watching your life reorganize itself around a version of you that is still under construction is terrifying. It feels like you're standing in the middle of a house while the walls are being torn down. You know you need a better house, but right now you're just cold and exposed. I've been exactly where you are. I remember my own liminal phase vividly. On paper, I had won. I had the full life. The big house, the successful business, the money, the nice car. I had a husband who was and still is a great man, steady and patient, ready to grow emotionally with me. And I had healthy, emotionally intelligent children who humbled me every day. By every standard of the world, I should have been done. I should have been happy. And yet I felt profoundly and inexplicably lonely. I thought it meant I was ungrateful. I thought it meant my healing wasn't working. But the loneliness wasn't about the people in my house. It was about the gap. It's the loneliness of the in-between. You can't go back to your old way of operating because you've seen too much. You can't unsee the dysfunction. You can't unknow your worth, but you haven't yet built the new foundation or found the new community that reflects where you're going. You're like a traveler who's left their home country but hasn't reached the new one yet. You're in international waters. Everything that used to feel familiar now feels like a suit that's 3 sizes too small. You try to have a surface level conversation with an old friend and it just feels like trying to breathe underwater. You see the shared dysfunction, the bonding over chaos, the mutual commitment to staying stuck, and you just can't do it anymore. The awkwardness that was supposed to set you free also creates a distance from your old wound, and that distance is heavy. That is the point where most people turn back. The loneliness gets too loud, so they shrink. They go back to the old role, they apologize for their boundaries, and they climb back into the too small suit because at least there they are understood, and at least there they belong. But I'm here to tell you, the loneliness is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It is a sign that you're outgrowing a space that was never built to hold your full self. Think of a hermit crab. When it gets too big for its shell, it has to leave it and scuttle across the ocean floor, completely soft and unprotected until it finds a bigger one. That scuttling phase is the liminal phase. It's dangerous, it's lonely, and it's a lot of work, but if the crab stays in the old shell, it dies. Expansion requires a period of being uncontained. As you keep going, as you keep sitting in the uncomfortable middle ground, something shifts. The emotional muscle you've been building in secret starts to show. You stop taking things personally. And I don't mean toxic positivity, where you pretend it doesn't hurt. I mean deeply grounded realization that people are not against you. They are for themselves. The friend who couldn't celebrate your win, they're just limited by their own unresolved smallness. The family member who calls you selfish for having a boundary, they're just terrified of what your growth reveals about their own stagnation. The people who exited your life when you stopped overfunctioning, they were only ever there for the customer service, not for you. Their behavior was never a reflection of your worth. It was always about a weather report of their own internal world. When you finally realize that you are only responsible for your own healing, a radical freedom takes over. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need the people who benefited from your wounds to applaud your recovery. You can honor what a relationship was without forcing it to be something it doesn't have the capacity to be. You sit in the loneliness. You let the old identity have its funeral. You build something quieter, steadier, and much more honest in its place. And one day, you look around and realize your life is no longer organized around survival. It is organized around truth. You find new people or your old people who are willing to grow with you, who can meet you where you are. You find connections that don't require you to shrink or perform. You realize you no longer have to hand yourself over to spaces that require you to be less than you are. And the most profound part, the part that makes all the grief in international waters worth it, is you stop passing it down. The wounds that were handed to you without your consent, the patterns that shaped you before you could speak, they stop with you. Because you were brave enough to be unhinged about reciprocity, brave enough to demand emotional safety, and brave enough to sit with the lonely middle of becoming, you are changing the DNA of your future. You are healing for you, but you are also creating a world where the people who follow you won't have to carry your bricks. That is your legacy. It is hard, it is lonely, and it is the most important thing you will ever do. And I promise you, the version of you waiting on the other side of this gap is worth every second of the disorientation. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, subscribe, and leave a comment.